Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Kiorkof, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be making some bold predictions as it pertains to the 2020 NFL and fantasy football season. Last offseason, I made an identical video. We talked about bold predictions, and on today's episode, we're going to see the results of those predictions that I made last year. Then I'll go ahead and make my bold predictions for this upcoming season as it pertains to the NFL, whether who's going to win the MVP, who's going to win the Super Bowl, and then we'll talk about my fantasy football predictions going into this upcoming season. Now, before we begin, of course, your guys' support as of late has been incredible. I cannot thank you guys enough. We are so close to getting to that 17,000 subscriber mark. For those of you who are new to the channel, click that subscribe button. For those of you who this offseason have just found me or signed up with Patreon, bought my draft guide, you guys are literally keeping the lights on in here. So I cannot thank you guys enough for your contributions and continued support. Thank you guys. It's just been incredible, and I love you guys for that. So thank you again. All right, moving on to today's topic, we're talking about some bold predictions, but we want to start off by talking about what predictions I made last offseason, how the results kind of panned out. Last offseason, I said that the Super Bowl champions at Super Bowl LIV would be the New Orleans Saints. And unfortunately, they got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. Kansas City Chiefs won. So I was off on that. Last season, I said that Deshaun Watson would win the NFL MVP. Lamar Jackson torched the league and won that hands down. I said that Nick Chubb would win the rushing title last season. He was going to win the rushing title, but unfortunately, here comes Derrick Henry week 17 against the Houston Texans, runs all over them for 200 plus yards and takes the title away from Nick Chubb. Not really a big deal, but it was close. As for comeback players of the year, I talked about Carson Wentz, Dalvin Cook, a little bit of Cooper Kupp, but Carson Wentz and Dalvin Cook, I was for sure on. They were going to have great comeback seasons based on their injury history. Dalvin Cook, even though he got injured once again in 2019, was still a top 5 fantasy back, while Carson Wentz finished among the top 12 fantasy quarterbacks himself and had himself a pretty good year despite everything that went down with all the injuries to the wide receiver positions for the Eagles. So again, those two guys balled out. And the last prediction I made that was not pertaining to fantasy football exactly was I made a stat prediction that Lamar Jackson would surpass 1,000 rushing yards last season, and he went ahead and did. Now, moving on to last season's bold predictions in terms of fantasy football. So last season, I broke it down as such. I asked myself a singular question. Which running backs that are not currently ranked within the top 12 going into this upcoming season are potentially going to either make the top 12 or finish as the number 1 overall player at said position? So it's more of a who outside of the top 12 is so capable of being a great player that not only can they just be in the top 12, but finish as the number 1 guy. So of the players that I named Josh Jacobs and Leonard Fournette last year at the running back position as my 2 for that set position. Both of them played well. If Josh Jacobs had not got injured, he would have finished as the number 9 overall back in a half PPR setting. And Leonard Fournette himself, if I'm not mistaken, finished as the number 8 overall back or number 9. So they were pretty much right next to each other. But both of them were not even close to being in the top 12 conversation prior to last season's draft. I know a couple people would either overdraft them because of their, being bullish on them and seeing the potential, but both of them produced pretty well. At the wide receiver position, a guy that I had predicted that was outside of the top 12 rankings that could have been the number 1 wide receiver or at least a top 12 wide receiver, I named Kenny Golladay. He ended up producing very well for himself, finished among the top 12 very easily on the top side of it for sure, considering his 10 plus touchdowns. Only 2 wide receivers had 10 plus touchdowns, him and Cooper Kupp, and Golladay definitely earned his spot amongst the top 12 wide receivers. At the quarterback position last year, I predicted Ben Roethlisberger. He got injured. Then that in itself kind of wiped away that prediction. I had Evan Ingram, and I didn't say that he would make the top 12 because he was already ranked within the top 12 last year. But instead, I predicted that Evan Ingram would finish as a top 3 tight end if in fact he had stayed healthy. He got injured, so that prediction goes out the window. And my last prediction from last year was that the biggest sleeper of the 2019 season that many people were just letting slide down draft boards. And though Jarvis Landry in 2018 finishes the number 18 overall wide receiver in a half PPR scoring format, that he would be better in 2019, regardless of Odell Beckham showing up to the team. And you know what? He pretty much delivered on that promise. Jarvis Landry finished as the number 13 overall wide receiver in fantasy last season in a half PPR scoring format and truly was one of the biggest sleepers in terms of his ADP in comparison to where he ended up producing overall last season. So those were my 2019 predictions, and those are the results. I kind of hit on a couple of them, and I kind of whiffed on a lot of them. And that's just, that's the nature of bold predictions. But let's go ahead. Let's talk about my bold predictions for this year. starting off with just the NFL bold predictions, I'm expecting the Kansas City Chiefs. In this current climate, with everything that's going on in the world, it's kind of hard to predict another team could dethrone the champs as of this moment in time. I know two-peating in the National Football League is not a possibility and is very uncommon. I have a hard time thinking that anybody in the playoffs can beat Patrick Mahomes in that offense. And when you get late down into the season and that defense is playing as well as they were, I mean, I have a really hard time thinking anybody can beat Kansas City this year. They're kind of like just the default, but to be honest, they are the best team in the league at this point in time. So I'll go ahead and tip my hat their way. In terms of another bold prediction, I know I'm going to hear it in the comments section. I expect Dak Prescott to win the NFL MVP this year. I think everything that has culminated around him, the amount of talent that they've surrounded him with, the brand new head coach Mike McCarthy coming in, bringing his offensive influences, and honestly, them improving their defense a significant margin will allow Dak Prescott to be on the field more often. If your defense isn't getting pounded down on a drive that's taking 8 minutes long, and you can go ahead and get it back on the field on a 3-and-out, go score more points. You have yourself a first-round wide receiver by the name of CeeDee Lamb, but you still have Amari Cooper. You still have Michael Gallup, who I'm so high on this year. Ezekiel Elliott, one of the best offensive lines, despite even missing Travis Frederick at the center position because he retired this offseason. I really do think Dak Prescott is on pace. And a lot of people in the comment section for my quarterback tier list video was saying Dak Prescott's too high. Do you guys forget that Dak Prescott finished as the number 2 fantasy quarterback last season? He had the most passing touchdowns, passing yards of his entire career last year. And it's only going to get better from here on out because they're only improving the offense around him. So that's my prediction, my bold prediction. Moving on, Nick Chubb. I expect him to win the rushing title this year. I mean, he didn't do it last year, but he was really close. And though Kareem Hunt is behind him, I expect this Kevin Stefanski offense, which the Vikings were a different team in 2019 in comparison to 2018 because of the influences of Kevin Stefanski and how they wanted to switch that offense. I expect him to come into this Browns organization and really allow Nick Chubb to run free with an incredible offensive line that they've built there, a fullback, and a scheme that they're going to just pound the rock down defenders' throats. And I think Nick Chubb is going to lead the league in rushing in 2020. Moving on, comeback players of the year. Cam Newton and Juju Smith-Schuster are my predictions. I think Cam Newton, obviously dealing with that Liz Frank injury for, pretty much the entirety of last season and still having to rehab from that shoulder injury, finds himself in a home with Bill Belichick. He was just named the starting quarterback of that organization. They are very confident with the scheme and the team that they've built there in New England, and I expect Cam Newton to make strides towards greatness this upcoming season. Again, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League in this past decade. He is one of the most talented players, and I think going into this upcoming season, he should be absolutely fantastic. On top of that, Juju Smith-Schuster. He was a top 12 wide receiver in 2018 with Antonio Brown on roster. If and when you get Ben Roethlisberger back, there's not going to be an AB to throw the ball to. And sure, Juju Smith-Schuster is going to have to face number 1 cornerback coverage every single week, but he's going to be heavily targeted. I'm expecting 160 plus targets this year. And when I always talk about opportunity leading to success, I expect that to translate with Juju Smith-Schuster this year. He's my comeback player of the year outside of Cam Newton. Now, my next prediction that I wanted to make, similar to the one that I made last year, I said that Lamar Jackson would surpass 1,000 yards. I'm predicting that Matt Ryan will throw the most passing touchdowns this upcoming season amongst all NFL quarterbacks. That's my prediction. Last year, Lamar Jackson threw the most passing touchdowns with 36. I expect Matt Ryan to probably beat that number this year. Kind of a bold prediction to say the very least. Moving on to some 2020 fantasy football player predictions. In terms of the running back position, similar to the way I had it last year. What running backs have the potential to make the top 12 that are currently not being ranked in that position, but have a great opportunity and great upside to make that? I think Mark Ingram and Melvin Gordon, though these guys have been, they're veterans in the National Football League. They've been in the league for quite some time now in comparison to the average running back. And I think that though Mark Ingram last season was a top 12 running back, he's kind of slept upon in the idea that, let's not forget, Mark Ingram, he only had 200 rushing attempts, but they didn't have to play him in the fourth quarter of literally any of their games during the regular season because they were up double digits in the fourth quarter. Here comes Gus Edwards in the fourth quarter. Now you have yourself an offense that, sure, if they're blowing teams out, Mark Ingram's going to be just as good as he was last year because he's going to get just as many touchdowns. If they're not blowing teams out, well, you're going to expect to see him in the fourth quarter, more in the third quarter, and more usage in the passing game because he is a capable receiver. I think he's a good running back, just throwing it out there. Another running back that's kind of being slept upon in terms of his current ADP and or where he's being ranked. Melvin Gordon was always a top 12 running back with the Chargers. Prior to, that holdout last year, he was going to be drafted as a top 12 running back because the opportunity was there, the talent's there, and the productivity was there. In terms of this upcoming season, I think that he has a better offensive line in the Denver Broncos organization. I know that the Denver Broncos don't have the best offensive line in the league, but they've gone about improving it this offseason. They brought in a brand new right tackle and right guard, Glasgow, and the guy he used to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going to forget his name. But they bring in two guys that, in my opinion, are supreme improvements in comparative to what they had last year. You still have a pretty good core of players in this offense. Melvin Gordon is a 3-down back. Even with Phillip Lindsay there, he has so much capabilities in the passing game in comparison. I think he has a very good potential to finish as a top 12 guy sneakily. Moving on to the wide receiver position, the two guys that I think that are outside of the top 12 that could finish in the top 12 very easily this year, DK Metcalf and AJ Brown. Interestingly enough, they both played together in college, and this upcoming season, though, they're undervalued to an extent, there's good reasoning why, right? These guys are not going to catch the ball 100 times. These are big-bodied wide receivers that are going to score touchdowns, that are going to get yardage and have a high yard per reception average. If, in fact, these two guys play up to their potential, I truly do think that these guys could potentially be in this conversation for a top 12 wide receiver spot. So DK Metcalf, AJ Brown in that conversation. In terms of the quarterback position, a guy that's outside of the top 12 that could finish as a top 12 quarterback, Daniel Jones. I talked about it a couple weeks back. Every season, there is at least two sophomore quarterbacks that have breakout seasons. Gardner Minshew's offense is falling apart, so he falls out of the conversation. Dwayne Haskins is not, surrounded by a good enough supporting cast. He falls out of the conversation. Kyler Murray has already been a stud in the NFL. He doesn't count, so it's either between Drew Lock and or Daniel Jones. And I think Daniel Jones, with the offense that surrounds him and the pieces that surround him, bringing in Jason Garrett, they're going to be able to at least open up this offense for him and really, make him comfortable and give him an opportunity to become a top 12 quarterback. That's my, anticipation and or bold prediction there. In terms of the tight end position, Blake Jarwin. I think Blake Jarwin, as of guys that are outside of the top 12 at this moment in time, Jason Witten finished as a top 12 tight end last year in that offense. If, in fact, you give Blake Jarwin those targets, the tight ends for the Dallas Cowboys last year had over 140 total targets, or over 120 total targets, excuse me. So if you go on ahead and send that in the direction of Blake Jarwin at all, even if you just send over 80, 90, I think he can easily be a top 12 quarterback. My prediction is that he'll finish as number 6 at his very best. Moving on to our last bold prediction, I have Keenan Allen as my biggest sleeper amongst wide receivers, running backs, tight ends that are known commodities going into 2020. He is the Jarvis Landry of last year, a player that, in my opinion, has so much talent, but is being undervalued because of his current situation. I think Keenan Allen is going to break out from this stigma of Tyrod Taylor not being a capable enough quarterback. Tyrod Taylor is going to funnel target him. He did it with Jarvis Landry in 2018. He's going to do it to Keenan Allen here in 2020. So I'm going to go ahead and take this bold prediction and say Keenan Allen is going to be a guy that when you draft him at his current ADP, whether he's going as a late end, low end wide receiver too, he's going to produce numbers far greater than where he's being currently drafted. And I'm excited about his upcoming potential. Those are my bold predictions of the year. Thank you everybody for watching. Tomorrow begins the slate of regular season content, running back starter sits tomorrow. I'm excited to show you guys some graphics, some cool stuff I've been working on for quite some time. Either way, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for the continued support. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Comment down below. What are your bold predictions? Who do you think is going to win NFL MVP? What is your, stat of the year? Who's the biggest sleeper this upcoming season in terms of known commodities? Let me know down below in the comment section. I really do thank you guys for supporting the channel. Smash that like button. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.